All right, let's go over the game from Sunday first, Florida State. Um, we had a lot of young players involved, and this is not to set up the mea culpa, mea culpa. That was a disappointing performance. Nobody's happy with it. Nobody from LSU fan base should be happy with that performance. I'm certainly not. We're disappointed. But we had 11 true freshmen on that trip, 5 first-time starters, 4 on defense, and we had 14 transfers. So 50% of that roster was going through it for the first time. And I think my comments, I want to kind of elaborate. I said, this is not the team I thought it was. It has nothing to do with their physical ability. I knew who they were physically. But, when you're playing and competing at the highest level, this is about a connection between the mental and the mental preparation, the mind and the body. And there was a disconnect there. The disconnect was, this is a hard game. The game of football requires a competitive edge that we lacked, in particular the second half. As you know, we got outscored 31-7. So understanding and recognizing how our team was thinking and what they thought about themselves and their beliefs and all of those things come into question when you talk about the performance. Because it's not just about talent. It's the ability to put talent and certainly the right way of thinking and what they believe, and certainly that belief was misguided, and that falls on my shoulders. In terms of messaging, in terms of how we get our players to understand that this game of football is very difficult. It's hard to win, especially when you're playing a top 10 opponent. You have to play with a competitive edge, which is a combination of a sense of urgency and emotional control. Those two coming together. Then finally, you've got to play with an attention to detail and focus. And all of those things, you can pick out situations throughout the game where those didn't come together. So it's my job to make sure that that occurs and that we get that taken care of so we can put the right LSU football team on the field. And that didn't happen. That falls on my shoulders. It's my job to get that corrected, and we will moving forward. So that's a little bit about the comments I made after. Look, there were some individuals that did some really good things, but it's pale in comparison to, at the end of the day, you're looking for wins. So stand up here and talk about different players and what they did do. This is about a full team coming together and delivering their best when their best is needed. And I did not have them delivering their best when their best was needed. So that's where we're at. That's where we need to get to. And we'll get there. Because I promised LSU fans that we would play this game the right way, and that's not the right way to play LSU football. So we moved to Grambling. Excited about a home game, obviously, and playing in front of our home fans. Clearly an HBCU school like Grambling, one of the historic programs in college football. We all would identify Grambling with the great history of titles and national titles, and certainly great players in Buchanan and Doug Williams, and certainly the great Eddie Robinson. So Hall of Famers and Willie Brown, I could go on and on. This is exciting. I know for anybody that follows college football, to top it off, it's a school in state as well. So I know our team is excited about getting back out there and playing the game the way it's intended to be played for 4 quarters, not for 2 quarters. Hugh Jackson, I think, is an an NFL head coach that has had great experience now coming into the college ranks, well respected. I respect what he's been able to do. This is a reworking of his roster in 1 year. This is a totally different looking football team. They lost to Hampton in a really good match, and Hampton's a good football team. So he's got a club that's going to be much improved over last year, and they do some really good things. Some nice players. The Crawley kid's a transfer from Alabama State. He had over 300 yards. They got some guys on their roster from Baton Rouge in their two deep. Some guys from Louisiana that will be undoubtedly anxious to get into Tiger Stadium and play. Matthews on defense. They've got some nice defensive linemen that can rush the quarterback. So it'll be an exciting opportunity for us to take care of what we need to take care of, and that's play this game the right way. As I said, winning's hard, and you've got to do all the things necessary to make sure that you represent the LSU brand and the history of this program the right way, and we'll get that going this week. So with that, we'll open up to questions.
Brian Wilson, from the Advocate. You talk about competitive edge. So then what's the plan, I guess, or how do you go about restoring that now in the middle of a season when it wasn't evident to you in week one?
Well, first of all, we're not in the middle of the season. It's game one, right? And two, it's a recognition of what a competitive edge is. And so some guys played with it and others didn't, but it's not good enough if we don't all have that same competitive edge. And as I mentioned, it's playing with a sense of urgency. It's when your offense comes out from the sideline and jogs out, to start the next possession, and the clock's running down and there's 6-7 seconds. That's not a sense of urgency. It's on defense when the backside corner's jogging across the field and run support instead of sprinting across the field like his life depended upon it. So it's coaching that. It's showing that on film. It's doubling down on the importance of playing with a sense of urgency and having the emotional control so it doesn't spill out into 10 penalties like Florida State had. We had 2 penalties in the game. So we probably had too much emotional control. So it's the balancing act of those two things, and knowing that we're early in the season and just have to make sure that we're accentuation on the most important facts, and that is one of the important facts.
Just curious what you saw in the film as far as Harold Perkins' performance. Can this team afford to not have him see ball, get ball?
Well, certainly a question that we have talked about. There's a lot going on, and you could clearly look at Harold and what he's asked to do versus, lining him up off the edge. Player development has to be thought about. Where he goes at the next level has to be thought about, and then impacting our team. So I think that there's a happy medium there that we could probably strike, and we've already begun to look at how we can be most effective for Harold and for LSU.
Hey, Coach, over here. Matthew Bruni with On 3. Just how did you evaluate the offensive line performance, especially in the run game against Florida State?
Yeah, I mean, we weren't, obviously feeling as though we controlled the line of scrimmage by evidence of our inability to be effective. But we got to run the football too. We didn't establish the run the way we need to. And I mean by striking on a much broader front. We've got to run it inside. We've got to run it outside. We've got to be much more balanced in terms of a running attack. Jaden Daniels can't be our leading rusher week in and week out. So our backs have got to touch the ball. So there's got to be more balance there. to get a true evaluation of the offensive line. I mean, when you're talking about just a couple of carries for each back, and you're talking about, read option situations with the quarterback, it's harder to get a full evaluation. But in those crucial situations, we've got to be better. There's no doubt. And like I said, there's improvement from the head coach all the way down to, our manager that has to be made here from week 1 to week 2.
2 questions. You not only are getting Mason Smith back this week, but you'll have him back at Tiger Stadium for the first time in a while. How do you feel about that?
Giddy. Is that a good enough word? I'd say gritty, but giddy is the best I could come up with in one word. No, I mean, he obviously impacts our defense. He allows us to do different things, allows us to, he's a guy that can play the 5 technique. He can play the 3. He can play the 1, the 0. I mean, his flexibility on our defense provides a new dimension that we're excited about getting him back.
And how do you feel about the first down rule after playing a full game with it in effect?
I'm sorry?
The new first down rule?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it's going to cost you a few plays here or there, but I don't think it impacts the game where it changes what you do strategically. We were able to mount a drive and late in the game, and that's what you're looking for. It was late in the first half. I think we had about 57 seconds. We were able to manage because the clock stops there. So I think in the crucial situations, it's the same thing. It gives you a fair advantage. It doesn't take anything away in the crucial situations, and I think it keeps the game moving.
Brian, after watching the film, in particular the secondary, I'm curious, how much of the issues were scheme, communication? How much was their guys were just better?
Well, I think there's some technical things that we have to be better at, technique-wise. We're an inside leverage and supposed to be denying the slant, and we're letting a receiver inside us. We're supposed to be denying the post, and we're getting run by. Is that physical ability? Is that lack of technique? Maybe it's both. Look, we knew that there were going to be some matchup issues. I want to go back to where I started. And when I say this game of football is hard, it requires such an attention to detail when it comes to, it's not just about your ability. You have to apply the technique and the traits necessary if you want to succeed in this game. And we just didn't do a good enough job, whether it was at the cornerback position or whether it was at the safety position. If you're supposed to be in a particular position, you need to be there. And that's where a number of things broke down for us, and in particular at corner.
Hey, Coach, this quote that was going around, we're going to beat the heck out of Florida State. It's my understanding that you said that at your coach's show in jest, and it was taken out of context.
I have no idea. I mean, look, I think you all know me. I'm pretty careful with what I say and how I said it. Never have I been cavalier or disrespectful to an opponent in my 33 years. So if somebody wants to prop up a comment like that and inflate it into something that it is not, that's what social media is about today. But I have nothing but the utmost respect for Coach Norville. I know who the opponent was. It's just not in my background or nature to make those kinds of comments.
I just wanted you to clarify, because I saw it, and I never heard you say it, and it didn't sound like something you would say.
Yeah, it's just, like I said, the position of head coach or any leadership position, you're going to get things thrown out there that are absolutely untrue, and you have no way to combat them, because you can just sometimes just throw stuff out there and hope it sticks. But that's not something that I would ever say.
Hey, Coach, Glenn West, Go247. I know you had mentioned last week that you were impressed by some of the progress the freshman class have been making. Do you expect, after a game like that, to have a lot of questions about kind of personnel and if those young guys might get some more opportunities going forward, or how do you kind of evaluate that aspect of it?
No, I think, look, anytime you have a setback, you're going to examine everything. You're not going to have blinders on and say, well, the ball just didn't bounce our way. You're going to examine everything, from, play calls to personnel to what time did we leave the locker room. So all of that is under scrutiny.
Hey, Brian, Sheldon Mickles of the Advocate. You were really good last year in the red zone, and so the other night, I think twice in the first half, obviously, first two periods, you got no points. What did you detect after watching the film? What were the breakdowns there?
I think when we talk about most of the issues that we had on both sides of the ball, it will come back to being 1/11th of the unit, meaning do your job. We had guys that in situational football were trying to do 3 other jobs instead of their own job. And if we were more disciplined and more focused and had the details to their job taken care of, we would find ourselves in a different position. And that's why my comments were on point relative to after the game. We weren't who I thought we would be. I thought we would be much more disciplined. I thought we'd have a better attention to detail when it came to those things, and we did not. And that's on me. And so I have to make those changes. I have to make those corrections, and we have to do a better job there.
Brian, when it comes to Aaron Anderson, is he going to get a chance to continue to catch punts after having the muffin? Would you like to see him more involved in the offense moving forward?
Yes, he's going to stay back there. Look, he's got to catch the football. And with him, it's the fundamentals, right? It's high hands, elbows in, square platform. It's the stuff that we talk about ad nauseum from day one. And he gets away from that a little bit. He goes back to these old beliefs of, I'm better than everybody, and I can just do it. And that just doesn't work, especially when you got cats running down the field and they're on you before you know it. And then you make a slight move and, you're off-centered a little bit and the ball can squirt out. So we just got to get him to be more disciplined, keep working with him. He's a young player. We're not kicking him out of the club. We're going to keep working with him. And then, there's then that natural progression of, getting him back involved in more of the offense.
Bryce Kuhn, 24/7 Sports. You talked on Sunday about needing to see choices be made from this roster, from these guys. Is that something that you can see those markers during practice, or is that something that you kind of have to see during the game? I mean, when you go back and look at that, just for going forward for this week, I mean, are you really not going to see anything until they get into that game atmosphere?
No, we'll begin to see those things during the week because we'll enact a different plan in terms of what we're talking about and what we need to see from our players. So it'll be a little bit different. We'll be able to get some instant feedback in how our guys are thinking. We got to get them to think the right way, and it starts with what they believe. And if you believe in the things that we're talking about and you're invested in them, then you're going to think the right way.
Yeah, Brian, right here, injury report update and a John Emery update.
Injury report would be Amani would still be questionable, and then the only one would be Anderson, which would be probable. And then, yes, so he's not available this weekend.
Hey, Coach. Just right down here. Do you think there was enough creativity with the play calling offensively from this past week?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into creativity on the offensive side of the ball or the defensive side of the ball. Look, our execution wasn't where it needed to be, right? You saw fourth down. I mean, we didn't execute to the level that we needed to execute. And then, you know, we scored 7 points in the second half. We had miscues. You know, we slip and fall and throw a pick. We drop some balls. You know, it was, look, everybody's accountable. The offensive coordinator, the head coach, the wide receiver, the quarterback. We win and lose together in this. So, you know, whatever narrative that we want to paint in this game, yeah, everybody could have been better. Yep.
Brian, I'm just curious, how much does last year's past history help in this process moving forward? Obviously, different score, but same results, and you guys were able to achieve a lot last year. Just curious, does the schedule also help you build this team as it progresses?
The circumstances are a little bit different. You know, this team in itself requires each year's different. You know, this team is a different team than last year's. So, and you know, I had a reasonable expectation that we could be a little bit further along. You know, we have to go back and make sure that we put another coat of paint on this. Is what I'm saying, and that's really the most important thing. And then we'll see where it goes from there. The teams last year were able to take hold of, you know, how hard it was to win. They had the taste of finishing last. This group did not. So it's a different team, and this will have different challenges.
Hey, Coach, over here. Jace was from Ground Football. I know you talked about the passing game with Jay and Daniels. There were some plays that y'all made, obviously, but the drop passes, the inconsistencies there. So just elaborate on just the passing game, what you thought about that overall throughout the entire game.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, I could go through a number of different situations. You know, we don't get to the chains on 3rd and 5. You know, we're short on the chains. What are you thinking in those situations? You know, what's your thought process? You know, we've got a drop here on 3rd and 6. You know, we're trying to turn upfield. Let's secure the catch. You know, we're 4th and 1, and you know, we're trying to make a play instead of, you know, reading what the defender is giving you. You know, I could elaborate further on defense. You know, we're spinning down a safety to sit in the curl. He's watching the quarterback. You know, we could have been more creative with play calling. We could have been better defensively and making some less spy calls and bringing more pressure. I mean, I could attack the whole thing. The bottom line is I've got to get our football team thinking the right way and play with a competitive edge. And football, this game of football, it is hard to win. If you don't play with a competitive edge, if you are not locked in and disciplined and focused, we can have a conversation about all these things all the time. If you have a competitive edge, if you recognize how hard this game is and you're focused, none of the crap that I just mentioned will matter because they'll overcome it. Okay, thank you.